Thank you for being here. I know some people, it's morning, evening, so good morning, whatever for everyone. This is our February edition of the Fireside Chat. It's a space where we shatter stereotypes and we celebrate success stories. And we learn from trailblazers who are redefining what it means to build a powerful and scalable business from Africa to the world. At Melanin Rich, we know that sometimes the narrative about African entrepreneurs are too negative. The focus tends to be on the limitations instead of limitless potential. But the guest we have today is a living testament to what becomes possible when we build with audacity and a deep-seated belief in our collective future. So we're very privileged to co-host a true architect of Africa's tech ecosystem. He is a serial entrepreneur. He builds and then backs the future. So you've heard him speak briefly already. We are speaking to Iyinoluwa Aboyeji today, but E for short, for those of you that might struggle with Iyinoluwa. But he is the co-founder and managing partner of Future Africa. Future Africa is a platform that provides capital, community connectivity to the new generation of innovative solution solvers that are dealing with Africa's biggest challenges. But he isn't just an investor, he's also a foundational builder. He was a co-founder of Andela that looked at the way African tech talent was nurtured and used that to unlock hundreds of millions in capital. And he then went on to co-found Flutterwave, which is now one of Africa's most valuable fintech unicorns. And it proves that we can build world-class tech companies from the ground up in Africa. His journey from building iconic companies to funding them is what I would say a masterclass in the ecosystem leadership. Because at Future Africa, he and his partners have invested in over 100 startups across the continent, and they are backing pioneers in tech, in healthcare, in education, in finance. So I guess Future Africa is a bridge. It's connecting the global community of mission-aligned capital to entrepreneurs that are building the future today. And that really is why we are so inspired. He is unwavering in his philosophy of passing forward the opportunities. He didn't just build and rest. So he's operating from a place of abundance, not just scarcity. He's been a vocal advocate for Africa capitalism and the belief that Africa's development will be driven by the private sector investing in long-term prosperity as opposed to the quick rich schemes that some usually see. So basically for us at Melanin Rich, his journey is embodying our belief that building from a position of power is what we need to do. He's demonstrated that success isn't about individual exits, but building a legacy that keeps elevating the entire ecosystem and replaces isolation, individuals doing things with interconnected networks of opportunity, which leads to exponential growth. So again, I'm very delighted to have E here today. And we are going to dive into a conversation about his experience building and backing and believing in Africa's boundless future. So here we go. You have transitioned from building, you built Andela, you built Flutterwave, to funding through Future Africa. So what was that pivotal moment that made you shift from founder to investor? And can you describe how your builder mindset influences how you might back founders today?
Yeah, thank you for that. I would love to say that it's true that I've transitioned, but the honest truth is that it's more like an added responsibility. I actually am still building. I still build businesses till this day. I'm building new businesses now in particular. But I would say what informed my transition was just realizing that operating leverage without financial contribution often means that it's more difficult for you to capture value. And also, it also means that the kind of value that you want to create requires the consensus of financiers, which tends to be problematic in and of itself. If you look at our track record as Future Africa, most of the firms that we built didn't have your typical African venture capital suspects in at the beginning. So in the case of Andela, worked with a small crew of folks, many of whom are now renowned venture capitalists. And same thing with Flutterwave and same thing with Move. So in many ways, one of the bitter lessons we've learned is that most people who get given most of the money don't really know what a lot of businesses that are promising look like at the earliest stage. And so as a result, many businesses were failing just because people didn't recognize their potential. And which then segues into the conversation you had about how a builder finances businesses. I think for me, I am very particular about understanding the unique customer insight driving a business. And I'm looking at it from a service mindset. Like I'm not thinking about your financials or what you show me in terms of the companies. They're important, but that's not what I care about. What I really care about is the customer real? Is the operating model scalable? And is the yield rich and sustainable? Right? So, and I'm able to evaluate businesses on the basis of what they really are, which is profits and loss machines,
Mm.
right? As opposed to on this picture perfect idea most financiers have of what a business is because they've never run one, where, they're scared off by a little bit of messiness and one or two imperfections that can easily be resolved. So in many cases, we're working shoulder to shoulder with businesses to better understand them, understand if at a fundamental level they actually work before we then proceed to make any case for or against them. I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. I hear you. So it's really about understanding the value that they are offering to the market because that's what's going to generate the income that creates the profit and how much they understand about their operations in order to be able to scale it and keep it going.
Right.
That,
Exactly. That's precisely it. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's actually, you've half answered my next question because my next question was going to be, how do you measure impact and returns? It sounds as if the return side you can see. I'm just wondering the impact side, because Future Africa looks at impact as well. How do you assess
Yeah.
that side of things?
So for us, impact is designed in the sense that before you make the investment, you're already on trying to understand how exactly impact will happen, right? Now, for us at our fund, the one thing we care about is jobs, right? Our fund has one goal, which is to make sure that more and more young people lead productive lives, right? Um, Lives where purpose and opportunities within their reach. That's our mantra, vision. And for us, we're always working it back to how does this enable the creation of new jobs? And with without a clear, direct hit on that point, you would rarely find us participating in that.
Fantastic.
So for us, jobs and livelihoods are like our core for everything that we do. And because that's our core, it's a lot easier for us to measure impact, right? Because for us, we're like, okay, how many jobs? And not in a perfunctory way where we're saying, or how many people are you going to employ? Platform efficiency or democratization of process or this investment or this protection of capital, it's going to create such and such number of jobs. You understand what I'm saying? So that's what we really kind of focus our energy on, and that's why we usually don't miss it when it comes to impact. I mean, our broad philosophy also as a business is that it's very rare that a business that helps other people make money doesn't make money itself.
Exactly.
So so that's usually our thesis. And that has proven itself to be quite true in many respects.
It's interesting, and that reflects that abundance mindset. As long as you're out there trying to make it happen, you will attract it as well. So it all just syncs together, which makes a lot
But
of
it has to go through you to get to them. So it has to go through you to get to them.
Exactly.
So quite logically, you will make the money.
Indeed, that I love that. It has to go through you. Fantastic. Yeah. Um, so just something that occurred to me as you were talking about, it's about, are they building, creating jobs? I imagine that it possibly looks beyond that organization, but it looks at the ecosystem that business might need to develop alongside it. So, I end up enabling other organizations that will be supplying me or that I will be supplying and building them as well.
Yes, precisely. I mean, that ecosystem element or what I call the platform element is key in the sense that we're a society that is defined generally by 3 Ds, right? The first D is decentralization, right? The vast majority of Nigerians, I mean, we are a country of 500 different languages and 200 and different ethnic groups. So if you were trying to centralize Nigeria, it's called the Federal Republic of Nigeria for a reason. The second D is distribution, right? If you think about the way our society works, it's largely trade led, right? So people are very used to distributing things through informal command and control fixed structures. And then the last thing is democratization, right? Which is that, you get more of what by people want more of X. And that's how you
I think we've lost you there.
so at the end of the day, knowing that our society is defined by these 3 Ds, the reality is that if you're building your business model around, command and control structures that assume centralized, strong government capacity, that assume all these different things, you would inevitably fail. And that's the mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make.
I love that answer actually because it leads so neatly into the next area that a lot of our audience are interested in. It is about the ecosystem. And there are lots of gaps, that's make it difficult for business to grow. Can you sort of say what, in your mind, is the most critical gap that's holding not just Nigerians, but perhaps most African innovators, holding them back today? And is there anything that your portfolio is doing to actively try and fix any of them?
Sure. I think the biggest gap is infrastructure. The biggest challenge most businesses have. I always say that the problem in Africa is not that businesses fail. The truth is the 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 most likely outcome of any business is failure. So that's not the problem. The problem is that failing is very expensive in Africa.
Mm.
And I don't mean that in a psychological sense. I mean just very practically. For you to fail, you had to pay 2 years of rent for a shop, as opposed to, you know, very quickly pay for a shop for 1 month, discover it's not working, and fail. So I always joke that Nigerians believe the lifespan of a company is 2 years because that's how much the rent costs upfront. So we need to make it cheaper for people to fail. The way to make it cheaper for people to fail is to build infrastructure that can then be metered out transactionally, and that can give more and more people an opportunity to fail cheaply, right? Because it's more efficient and more productive if people can fail cheaply. Chief of this is connectivity and energy. I would say those are the two maybe biggest problems the country has. There are other problems. I mean, physical infrastructure. There's very little spaces, but connectivity and and energy are very crucial ones. And if you can solve those two problems, it changes, quite a bit. For a long time, for us, we've really seen ourselves as a how do I put it, as a technology fund. So we've been very reluctant to touch infrastructure, but we're starting to get into infrastructure, and you see us kind of get more and more into infrastructure, which is something that we're doing because we realize that the existing players in the infrastructure space don't really get it. They're copying Western models of infrastructure development that were borrowed from a post-war mindset about what was possible. And there's a cost of infrastructure to create jobs that is much lower and far more efficient. I mean, investing in distributed solar panels, investing in connectivity across the country, those are much cheaper than investing in roads and silos and cold chain, even though those are also important, right? And ports. But at the end of the day, with digital, you don't need a port and the cost is much less.
Absolutely. You're quite right. A lot of the more established players are trying to emulate what worked for the 1960s, 50s even, in other countries, whereas, we can leapfrog all of that and just move to the current technologies. Yeah. Okay.
Precisely.
Yeah. Okay. So the next area I'd like to jump to then is, advice really for some of the audiences that we work with. A lot of them, want to build, but they're actually, many are searching for the right problem to solve. So it's sort of building on your fail fast, scenario that you were, sort of describing. I guess what we're wondering is what process would you suggest for identifying a truly transformative opportunity for those that are looking for what to build? How can they land on something that will work?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a question I get a lot, and honestly, the answer is quite obvious, but difficult to accept. Which is that for an opportunity, you're likely to go wrong. But if you look for a person with a problem, you're likely to get closer and closer to what actually will move the needle. And then the rest of it is just strategy and scale. Um, a lot of people kind of are looking for an opportunity or an idea. Meanwhile, they should just be looking for problems to solve and solving those problems and trying to find out who else has that problem or who has proximity to people with that problem and how many people have that problem, so that they can then scale tremendously. So I think there's a big opportunity in my mind with scaling around the concept of you know the innovation itself, particularly when it comes to um, finding a problem whose customer set you love. Because sometimes you can find a good problem, but you don't like the customer enough to want to suffer to, and that you don't mind helping solve that problem for them for maybe close to the rest of your life.
I love that actually. Yeah, if you find a problem but you don't like the customer, then you do need to think twice about diving into that. But I actually also I think what you've described is instead of looking for what you can get, which is that looking for opportunity mindset, is looking for what you can give because you're looking to help somebody solve a problem. Which yeah, again, is that about abundance thinking. It's, I'm looking to give, and you will uh, definitely get in that process. So yeah, that all sort of syncs up with everything you said earlier on. Um,
Yes.
I think the next segue I'd like to go down is around cultural integrity for founders, because a lot of the thinking is that the money needs to come from the Western world, from somewhere else. And therefore, people tie themselves up in knots trying to make it appealing to people from a different culture, even though the market is on the continent. What advice do you have for founders about, staying true to the culture?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, the truth is that you know a lot of people, particularly our people, make this big mistake where they spend so much time worrying about investors when we should all be more concerned about the customer, right? Because at the end of the day, the investor's money is not free. Uh, the investor's money is quite frankly only conditional on the customer paying back that money something. So for me, staying authentic is simply staying authentic to the who actually pays you, and you have the ability to choose that boss, which is the customer. And I find that because our people, we've made capital a justice issue,
Mm,
and I think of it as an opportunity issue. Um, and opportunity, I mean it both ways, in the sense that those who don't invest in us are losing as well because we have ridiculous customer insights about customers. Quite frankly, they would struggle to understand
yeah,
in any other context. And those customers happen to be perhaps some of the most prolific consumers on the planet. And what you ultimately find is that because our people don't have that mindset of remaining culturally authentic to their customers, they give a lot of power to investors that investors don't really have. And that's how we end up in trouble, solving problems we don't have because we're trying to appeal to an investor sensibility. And it's a lose-lose, right? It's a lose-lose because the investor never makes that money back.
yeah,
And then furthermore, you don't make that money back as well. and, and in fact, in a third way, it then becomes a justification for the kind of discrimination you see when it comes to capital,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because they come back to us and say, hey, that's why I can't give black people money.
Mm,
Um, so I think we got to change our mindset about that. Like, investors are not important at all. The customer is. And our understanding of the customer is ultimately the most important thing that determines the success of the company.
I love it. I love it. Choose your boss. The customer's your boss, not the investor. Yeah, absolutely.
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 Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah, got it. Okay. Okay. this might be a bit of a sideway thing, but I'd love your insights.
Yeah.
Policy.
Any question? You're all good.
Government policy, government regulations, compliance. Do you see this as something that is a potential barrier for entrepreneurs, or do you have advice in terms of how to engage to make things much easier and more welcoming to
Yeah.
entrepreneurs?
Well, I have a very different view from most entrepreneurs about policy in the sense that I actually think policy has been the greatest enabler of entrepreneurship in Nigeria. I always have this saying, I say policy creates markets. And the problem entrepreneurs generally have is um, they, first of all, they believe it's government's job to make their business succeed. And the rude awakening is realizing that, yeah, like that's not the job of government in any society. Government's job is not to make your business succeed. Government's job is to make people's lives better. So, and if it doesn't, government is not doesn't have any obligation to make your business successful. And then the second thing is then you know we as entrepreneurs don't have that mindset of how policy can create markets to make people's lives better. Really contribute to policy, right? We never really define our markets, right? And as a result, we never really prepare ourselves for those opportunities where policy creates new markets. And instead of applauding regulation, which, by the way, is necessary
Exactly.
for any investor to come into your business to help it scale,
Yeah,
um, we instead criticize government for establishing regulation as it should, right? And say that they're using regulation to kill businesses, as opposed to looking at the opportunity embedded in the regulation and trying our best to make sure that it favors the business and engaging to make sure that it favors our business, even as it favors the consumer. I'll give you a practical example. When I was doing the ideation and conceptualization of the company that everybody now knows as Move, Moove. It's one of the largest vehicle fleet operators in the world. And it started in Lagos, right about the time as people were complaining about the Okada bans. And the
mm,
reality was the Okada bans created an interesting challenge, which was a lot of people who needed to travel long distances. I think that was more presentable and more autonomous than a bus which you had to wait for to fill. There was that gap, and I saw it, and I recognized simultaneously that you know it's also led to some level of growth for the ride sharing platforms. But there was a critical challenge with the ride sharing platforms, which was that many of the drivers didn't own their cars.
mm,
So you had this very exploitative system where driver their second or third car, which wasn't very good looking, very not very nice, broke down often. You know what I mean? Their market car, and that driver would pay exorbitantly for it, and the car would break down, and the passengers wouldn't have a great experience. So we decided to approach Uber and create legislation for ride sharing that
mm.
then made it possible for folks like me to go raise money and invest in cars specifically for Uber. All right. So we then brought cars to the table and got drivers to drive those cars so that passengers had a clean, decent vehicle that they could ride in. And that business now is going to be $1 billion business pretty soon, doing extremely well. And that without that policy from Lagos State, which by the way netted them some revenue because Lagos State then used that opportunity to put a small charge on every kilometer ridden, right? which then became revenue for the state to use to build roads and other road infrastructure. So it's all about finding the opportunity. Some people would not, rather than find the opportunity, they would kind of complain about government without recognizing that government is really after safety of and comfort of its citizens. And rather than input into that, I mean, we helped write the Lagos rideshare regulation. So we know, we know what it took, and that regulation alone has created what is today an incredibly well performing global business.
I love it. I love it. So it's not just even because, you could start by railing against the regulation and seeing it as a headache, or you can just accept it. But actually, you're going beyond that. It's leveraging that regulation to see how you can use resolving and helping people to work within the regulation or even establish a regulation as a way to generate a win-win for consumers and the government.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Exactly.
Fantastic. I love it. I love it. Okay. Okay, I'm going to take it a bit personal now. Because your journey has had a few highs and challenges. So how do
Yeah.
you deal with, expectation, public scrutiny? What have you had to do in terms of mindset to endure, the attention and the interests that people have?
Uh, Common approach to it, which is I I don't I'm very how do I put it? I don't read the room. I'm very so whether it's praise or criticism, I generally don't pay attention to it. Um, and look, I mean, for me, the way I handle pressure, quite frankly, is I am is God, quite frankly. So I just, if God is happy with me, I'm good. It's just easier for me if I have one boss and I don't have to worry about everybody else. So I think that has really helped me. Only accountable to one person, which is God, and that's it. So I don't really listen to people as such, and so criticism or praise has doesn't have much impact on me.
I love it. I love it. It's you've got your North Star is internal. It's you and your God. So, it doesn't matter what people say. You've done your best. Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. The final main question. If you looked ahead sort of 20 years, what would you like future Africa to have done for the continent? What story would you like history books to tell about future Africa and what you've achieved?
Yeah, I mean, Future Africa is, I mean, the vision is really simple, which is, you know, we want to create a million, we want to directly create a million jobs that pay $10,000 a year.
Ooh,
It's very simple, and we want to do it by uh, leveraging the digital economy, um, the green economy, and the creative economy, because we think that's where the jobs are, and we think that we can be. I mean, when I thought about Future Africa from day development finance institution, not just a VC fund.
okay.
Um, we just happen to start very small, but as we grow, and we are growing pretty fast. I mean, we're very quickly approaching about 100 million.
Okay.
We we are growing very very fast. We are learning a lot about ourselves. We're learning a lot about what we want to do or how we can do it. We're building more infrastructure, but we're going beyond structure, making big bets in the area of talent. And I mean, these are very important areas to us. Like I said, being a leading investor, a catalytic investor that can create talent in the green economy, in the creative economy, and in the digital economy.
I love it. Catalytic investments. I love that phrase. And yeah, you're already on the path. So yeah, amazing, amazing. Okay, I'm going to make it a bit more fun. But these questions, we'll see, they are about you, a lot of them. Um,
Yeah.
can you tell us about one daily habit that keeps you grounded? So it's non-negotiable. You just do this every day that keeps you grounded and focused.
Or I pray. I get up in the morning and I pray. I pray. Yeah. So that, I mean, if my day hasn't started, if I don't worship at least for an hour, I mean, I just have to. So yeah, that's the only habit I know I'm consistent at. Everything else changes, even eating.
Fantastic. Great. So prayer. Okay. Um, best advice for that you have received when you started out, when you were starting Andela, Flutterwave, Move It, in the early
Yeah.
days, what really helped you to
Yeah. Yeah, the one advice I got one day I went to dinner with a guy called Joe Lonsdale with my co-founder at the time of a company I built that didn't go so well, not as popular. It was called bookneto.com. And Joe hosted us to dinner at this fancy place in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And and he said something that has never left my head. He was like, look, you know, a lot of people want to build billion-dollar companies, but they don't realize that the way you build a billion-dollar companies is to have two or three people who individually could build a $10 million company, but decide to come together, and they're because they have come together, their impact is not just additive. So they don't build a $30 million company; they build a $1 billion company because it's exponential. So it is giving me, for me, it's a very high bar when I think about partnerships. Like I don't a lot of people want to build businesses with their friends. I'll be
Mm,
very honest and say I don't have many companies I've built where I'm like I co-founded a business with somebody because they were my friend. In fact, in many cases I maybe don't have a I just look for the best people in the world to build with, and I have a high bar for co-founding talent in particular. We build a relationship through the work as opposed to that. And that keeps me very honest because then I go for the best people in the world as opposed to many other people who choose to go for friends or people that they can control as co-founders.
that's interesting. People they can control. Um, and just to look at that, examine that a little bit. I guess if you are looking for somebody you control, then essentially you are the only founder because you're not letting that other person add value.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. No, thank you for that. Thank you. Okay. A bold prediction. Can you give us one prediction about a particular sector that you think is going to really explode over the next 3 years?
Um, so I think well, I mean, it goes without saying that artificial intelligence is now permeated everything. It's like the new internet. But maybe in that subset, um, I'm actually really passionate about food. It's about the cost of food. Um, I really think that there has to be a way we can get to um, people being able to eat for $1 a day. Today, it's not actually possible. 1,500 naira can't buy a decent meal in
Mm,
Nigeria. Um, well, actually, now it's 1,320, I think. Last time I checked the exchange rate. Uh, but that can't buy any meal in Nigeria. I mean, no matter your income class, you can't eat 3 times a day
Yeah.
on 1,300. So there has to be a concerted effort to bring down the cost of food. And what I would love to see is a world where you can eat for 3 times a day for 1,000 naira.
I love that. I love that. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility because we've got the land, we've got the resource. It's
Yeah.
just that infrastructure,
Yeah.
that logistics.
And we have a lot of waste. That
Yeah,
we
indeed.
have a lot of waste as well. So there's just that processing and logistics piece precisely.
Exactly. No, yeah, I completely get that. I can see how that should grow. Okay. Okay. And one final question. Your proudest moment, beyond your own exits, is there anybody you've watched, you supported and watched that have made you proud?
That's an interesting question. I mean, many, many. When I step back from building, actively building, and decided to start investing, the first company I got involved with was Move, right? So I basically helped fund. It was the first check, and sort of helped supported them, and they've done an incredible job. Um, there's also the founders of FMM, Filmmakers Mart, another incredible story. Um, Met them just about 3 years ago. They were building the production infrastructure for the creative economy, and they were building a creative economy marketplace where you could rent locations and equipment and all that. And now they've built an incredible business. Sony and IFC are investors. Um, so lots of them. I mean, if I started to count, I would. All the businesses I've been a part of, I've had reason to be proud, even when they didn't end well, because the entrepreneurs held their head up high and attempted something daring, which is in and of itself is worthy of commendation.
It's awesome. Awesome. I, I guess, all I can say is this has been such an education. There have been real nuggets in there around, focusing on the problem and who is the boss and really, looking at the partners that you're working with and how you're working with them so that it's the exponential growth as opposed to, bodies just trying to run a business. So many nuggets in there. So we are fundamentally grateful for your time, for the fact that you've chosen to give this time to us to help to educate our members so that they can also grow businesses that create those jobs and create that scale across the world. So thank you so much for doing that. We will be
Thank
looking to
you so much.
we'll be looking to broadcast this quite widely. I really hope that you are okay with that. Um, and we will also come
Of
back to
course.
you. Fantastic. We're also going to come back to you with a few of our members that we feel might be ready for your fund. And we'll do that offline. So we look forward to talking to you about that as well.
No problem. Looking forward to it.
Thank you
Thank you so
so
much.
much.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And thank you, everyone that joined.